What is up, you guys? I'm excited because we are back with another bonus round with Zach, Keith, and Luke. And on today's episode, we've got a young gun bringing the heat, sharing his experience, joining the Woodworking Business Accelerator program, Nick Planeta with Planeta Woodworks. And so excited to have him on. So check this episode out. I hope that you get some value from it. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Handmade Business Secrets podcast. Hopefully you're checking this out here on the podcast or on YouTube. And this is another bonus round with Zach, Keith, and Luke. And we're super pumped. Keith, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Mr. Luke Dodds, how are you, sir?
I am. So I'm ready to get at it. We got a good one today.
He's pretty great. So our special guest today is the young and talented Mr. Nick Planeta. Nick, how you doing, bro?
Good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. I'm excited to have you because you've been in the program 4 months?
This is the fourth, yeah.
This is your 4th month. And Nick has absolutely crushed it. So we want to get his perspective on, like, what do you feel like you did that made you successful in the program? What really allowed you to come right in and do a great job? But before we get there, tell us a little bit about yourself, Nick. What's your favorite color?
Favorite color is red, actually, but I'm
Okay.
from Durham, Connecticut, so over on the East Coast, and I'm 21 years old, so pretty young. I started the business when I was 15. I was a sophomore in high school when I started it officially, and kind of fell into that trap of within woodworking of, like, doing the small stuff, the cutting boards, and for a while it was great, but it came to a point where it was just kind of a flat line, and one of those things where it wasn't growing anymore. It was just, you got your fair share of work for the year and you didn't see any growth. And that's why I turned to Zach in the program to try to jumpstart the growth and get somewhere with it. So I'm currently pursuing a college degree in civil engineering. Supposed to graduate next May. So I'm a senior in college now.
Very nice. Very nice. So are you still in Connecticut?
Yes.
Okay, very cool. So how did you first come across our stuff? Did you come across an ad, a podcast, YouTube? How did you kind of find us?
Actually came across it on YouTube, and watched a bunch of videos of, like, all your different tips and tricks on certain things, and started to apply some of that stuff. And then I realized that, I was trying to apply, like, certain methods of production per se for a business that, wasn't niched down to a certain degree. So it was kind of just like what you talked about on our onboarding call 4 months ago, the Swiss Army knife of woodworking, where I was just putting my hand in every bucket that I could find and trying to find work, which was great because, I was flexible in doing that. But, in the long run, that's not the most efficient way to run a business. And so then I found you on Instagram and clicked on one of the ads, and boom, within an hour, I think you reached out, and we ended up talking on a onboarding, or not an onboarding call, but a kind of a discussion to see if it would work for my business.
Very nice. Very nice. And so I'm going to let Luke ask a couple questions, and so I don't just dominate the conversation here. I'm tired of being the one that talks all the time. So
Yeah. So Nick, what were the biggest issues with your woodworking business before you decided to take that leap of faith into the program?
I think the biggest issues kind of were, it started with, like, niching down into one thing. So, when I first started way back in high school, it was cutting boards, and that's literally all I did. And that was great because everybody I knew would buy them. And then I started doing things online, and more people bought them. But then there came to a point where it was like, okay, well, each person is only going to buy one cutting board, unless they're going to buy it and give it away as a gift. So there was, like, in Durham, Connecticut, where I'm from, is pretty small. So there's only so many people that are going to buy cutting boards until you've kind of saturated the need for it. So I kind of reached that point, started doing, like, custom orders and, like, one-off things, things that would range from, like, furniture, like cabinets and stuff, to countertops, and just random things that people needed. And that was all well and good, but it was also like all over the place, and there was no efficiency in the shop because there was kind of projects everywhere, stuff going in every direction. Every time I went to work on a project, I had to set up a machine differently.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of the issue. It wasn't niched down, and then that just kind of eats away at efficiency and profitability in the long run.
Yeah, it's like when someone asks you, how much is this table? And it's a design you've never done before. How do you give them a price?
Right.
Had you done tables before joining the program?
Not dining tables I haven't done, but before that, but I did quite a few coffee tables and kind of like smaller end tables I've done. But even that was kind of like sporadic. It was kind of by request only. I didn't make like any designs or have any designs online that I promoted
Yeah,
before joining the program.
totally. So you're what, 4 months in? I'm looking at you, I think May of 24 you jumped in,
Yeah,
right?
it was like mid-May.
Yeah, so like what's been the biggest game changer since you joined back in May?
Think the biggest game changer was just having a group of guys that are all doing the same thing, or obviously in different areas and different markets and stuff like that. But and being able to meet with the coaches, you and Luke, and also talk to the other guys and see how people are doing things. And then the other big thing is like developing a production schedule. Like prior to the program, I never had a production schedule. I had a list of invoices, and sometimes I was lucky to print them out and have that list of, okay, this needs to be done. But sometimes I'd get into a busy season, which a lot of times was like my holiday season, and then the rest of the year was kind of dead.
Right.
But I would get into that season and I'd be like, okay, I've got 20 different orders that I need to work on, and what should I do? And I would just sit there and be like, I don't know what to start on. And then, there, like I said, it goes back to the lack of efficiency because it was so many different things before the program.
Nice. So like a community that can help you, and then like systems to help you get through the work. So it's
Right.
two big
Yeah.
things. Awesome.
I'd
Nice.
say I'm just going to add to that just real quick is that that is super common. I think everybody that maybe listen to this can relate to that. Like if you have any type of book of work in front of you, there's a couple mistakes that guys make is that they just work on a project at a casual pace until they get done with it and then they just pick up the next invoice. And so they're not actually setting production targets or goals of like, hey, this is what we can get done if we like really meander through this process. This is what we can get done if we're really focused. And so you'd be surprised how much time you could shed off of a project by just like setting a deadline, setting a, okay, I have to have this done. And the beauty of that is, being able to plan that out ahead of time and know, and also forecast your cash flow, which is what a lot of guys really struggle with inside of this business is that they don't have enough cash flow coming in because for us and for what we teach inside the program is we take a 50% deposit upon the order when the order is placed, and then a 50% deposit or 50% second half payment when the order is completed. And so when you are forecasting and planning production, you're also forecasting and planning receiving that second half deposit, and you can actually make purchases and order materials and pay for employees and plan to move into commercial spaces and do all the things that you couldn't do before when you're just kind of casually going about planning production. And that is totally normal and also super common. And so,
Yeah, you want something. The reason I started was you want something more substantial, more, I guess more substantial would be a good word I would use is it's not just a side thing. It's a side thing, but I want it to be something worthwhile, something that I can build and enjoy the benefits of, enjoy the fruits of my labor. And unless you have systems in place or you know your numbers somewhat, it's hard to forecast and plan and think about what you can actually make in a year or a month or a week or whatever without knowing your stuff. So Nick's done a great job
Yeah.
coming in as a young buck, just taking action and getting organized. And he's built a few really cool tables so far, and he's got so many more to do. So it's cool. It's cool to see how he's grown in the short time.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think doing the smalls, it's great, for some people, but it's also like you're dealing with stuff that's kind of in the $100 range, maybe up to 1,000 in some cases. And a lot of those jobs, people aren't going to give you a deposit for, people aren't going to give you 50% down for a cutting board. They're going to say, all right, make me the entire cutting board and then I'll pay you whatever the price is. But, aside from trying to sell enough of that for it to be worthwhile, you're also dealing with, you don't have that initial cash flow with that type of stuff. So people just starting out, in that small thing, there's like little to no cash flow. And I remember when I first started, and I mean, I was in high school, so I was really still learning on this stuff, but it really helped to, just set up a time. And I did it a little bit, just try to manage time very well to get stuff done. Because otherwise, if you don't have a deposit and you're not working efficiently, then there's no cash flow at all. It's just you're at a dead stop. So I think that definitely helps. And then obviously scaling up when I had more time to do that helped a lot too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nick, like you're building these smalls, kind of casually, you're in high school, and you get out of high school, you start into college, still going at these smalls, you're doing like trade events and all these other things I think you shared with me. So what did your income kind of look like when you're doing, your smalls? And then as you transition into these dining sets and you get like a true roadmap together, you start getting organized, you're getting your systems together, you're working efficiently, you're planning, you're doing all these things. How has your income changed on a month-to-month basis?
So really like the first couple of years I never really counted because I reinvested all that money into like upgrading equipment. But once I started kind of tracking income for this, which was kind of like the last year of high school and right going into college, which about 3 years ago now, it was kind of like one of those things where I was happy to see, like at the end of the year, I was happy to see the total income, and I was like, wow, I didn't think I would make that much in a year doing the smalls. But the thing was because of the nature of that work, because of the inefficiencies that existed at the time, the bottom line wasn't great. It was like maybe for the year, I think my first like 3 years ago was like $50,000 for the year, which I thought was phenomenal at the time. And then my bottom line profit after all expenses was like 2,500 or $3,000. And then as I made that transition, in the last 4 months, I've noticed like we've already outdone like the last 2 years of gross revenue. So we've done really well in 4 months, and that's only selling 6, almost 7 table sets now. Then the other thing is like the efficiency part of it is not only, it's not only the total income at the end of the year, me becoming more efficient has like increased that bottom line dramatically. So now, I have a ton of work in front of me right now, but it's also one of those things where when this work is done, and assuming technically no work is ever done because you hope that you keep adding to it. But when these jobs that I'm working on right now are done, there's going to be more bottom line profit in my account. And that's kind of the key to growth and success, I think.
So what did you do last month in sales? Do you remember?
In sales, I think it was around 15,000, and that was just from ads that I kind of counted towards that. So there
And
were
what did you spend on ads?
I spent $750 on ads last month.
Yeah, so you got
Nice.
a 20x return on your ad spend. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you do the month before that? Do you remember?
The month before that, I think we did around 10,000, but we only did 500 in ad spend that month. So it's still
Okay.
Nice.
close to
Still got a 20x return on ad
That's
spend.
awesome.
so
Yeah. That's
the
wild.
first month, I will say and this is kind of the key to like advertising is, and I was always very kind of skeptical with advertising because, and I've tried, numerous different things over the years with advertising smalls, that just didn't work at all. Hence the reason why I'm here. But the one thing with advertising is like I never expected like certain things to work, and people would be like, oh yeah, we could run ads for you, you spend this much, this much, this much, and you'll get whatever. But they were not experienced in this industry, which in this industry is very, very different than your classic like
E-commerce type
shipping,
stuff.
e-commerce type stuff.
Yep.
And that was the problem. Anyone can write an ad, anybody can post it on Facebook or whatever and take your money for it, but they don't know like the right people to hit for this type of industry. And when I talked to Zach in the way beginning, it was like moms and grandmas that are moving into a new house or moving all together that need a new table. And I was like, this guy knows exactly the people that are going to buy tables. So that helped tremendously.
That's awesome. Nick, man, so like when we're talking to new guys who are thinking about joining the program, we always say like there are three big things you get from like the 30,000-foot view of the program. You get, our licensed photos and videos, you get the advertising agency, and you get the community and coaching. What of those three things was the biggest game changer in your business? I know we kind of touched on this, but like of the three, what have you gotten the most value out of?
Honestly, that's kind of hard to say like one that actually did it. I think it was the big thing was the combination of the three. But I would say the community of everybody and being able to work with the coaches with you and Keith and those were kind of the big stepping stone to trying to, you have once you join the program, you get your ads going, you got the photos, so it's not like you have to go make 12 different tables and then take pictures of them. So you have that, and then you have leads coming in, but you also, you need to have the training, like the sales training that Zach provides, and then also kind of like the check-ins and like the self-discipline. Like, are you actually putting in the effort to make these deals? Because you could run ads and then be horrible at replying to messages, or never know how to write a quote, or never know how to price accordingly. And you could price your tables all $1,000 a piece and then never make any money. And the problem with that is, okay, now you're getting traction, but you're never going to make anything because you're not pricing accordingly based on like what a table goes for. So
Yeah.
I think a combination of the three is critical and has definitely been the biggest help for me. But it's more specifically, just having the community and then you guys to coach me along.
For sure. Yeah. I'll say, just to kind of bounce off of what you're saying, Nick, margins are critical. And I think a lot of people get enamored by like top line numbers. Top line numbers are like sexy and marketable, and even in my own stuff, I'll tell you, like talking about having a, $900,000, top line revenue business, that's really sexy. But at the end of the day, none of that matters. What matters is how much money you keep.
Right.
Like, how much money do I actually keep, and how do I improve my margins and I improve my efficiencies? And so we're not just here as the program, as the coaches, to, scale you to the moon with top line revenue. We're here to actually help you keep a larger chunk of what you actually do sell and what you produce. And so okay, I got a quick question for you. You've been successful, you've done well, you're still pretty new in the program. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 21.
Okay, 21.
So between Nick and Luke, you add them together, it's basically me or you, Zach.
I know, right? I know. So I love the young guns just coming in and just you got all the old guys. They're like, oh, I don't know if I should join or not. And you got these just gunslingers. Get out of the way, Papa. We're going to do it. So I love it. Okay, so the question I wanted to ask you was, what do you feel like is the difference between the guys that really succeed and the guys that don't? If you could look at your own journey, and maybe if there was like a conversation that you had with a coach, or maybe if there was something that you were struggling with something and you had an epiphany, aha type moment, what were some of those for you? And like, what really helped you like kind of break through the barrier and start seeing a good return consistently the last couple months?
I think the big thing is kind of just repeatability with, as far as like, replying to leads and like experience and closing sales, is like repeatability in practice. Like it's normal with any advertising that you're going to get your tire kicker leads that don't go anywhere, or the people that are super interested until you give them a price. But I think, replying to every single lead that you get, regardless of where it's going to go, is crucial. And practicing like that strategic
Rhythm.
doing it, the rhythm of just back and forth. And in the beginning, I was kind of like, wow, this is a lot, because I'd get like no leads all day, and then like three o'clock in the afternoon, I'd get like 10 leads one after another. And it's like, it was crazy. Like sometimes I had to stop doing work for a second, but I had to like think to myself that, you know what, this is just practice. Like this 10 leads could be all bad leads. This 10 leads could be 5 good, 5 bad, And so I think that was the big thing. And then as far as like, within the program, I think people who are successful in this program are the people who, if there is a problem, or if you have a question, or if you're not sure about whether something is a good move. And I've got a perfect example is when I had issues with my spray gun, and I had one of those cheap spray guns from Home Depot. It was a Wagner spray gun. And I went to spray chairs one day, and the finish on the chairs was absolutely horrible. I went through an entire gallon of paint, which cost me $90 for a gallon of paint because it was gallery series. And it was just the most rough finish ever, because the gun was not designed for spraying chairs. It was designed for just like basic DIY projects. And I told Luke, or I went on our group chat, and I said to him, I'm all done spraying chairs. I'm going to send all my chairs out to this guy who's going to paint them for me. He owns a professional paint booth and everything else, and he's going to match the colors. And Luke says, well, how much is this going to cost? And I said, it's $130 per chair. And I was like, well, I think that's all I could do, because this spraying in my garage isn't going to work. I got overspray all over the garage door I had to clean off. And spraying in the middle of my yard isn't going to work, because I have bugs flying around that are just going to stick to the paint and make a mess. And pretty much I got on a quick huddle with both Keith and Luke, and they convinced me to just stop and go to Lowe's and get a Graco spray gun for $300 and use that. And that's what I did. I got off the huddle. I went right to Lowe's and got this spray gun. And it was an actual, like, it's entry level, but it's more professional of a spray gun than what I had. And it was an absolute game changer for what was happening. I mean, it takes a lot of practice to spray chairs and table bases and stuff with, the detail that those things have. But it was an absolute game changer, and it saved me $1,000, because I was going to send 10 chairs to this guy to paint them, and it would have been $1,300. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm still going to profit by $700, I think is what I told Luke. And he's like, no way. He goes, go get the spray gun and you'll profit $2,000 on the job. So that's just one example of, like, I was completely out of ideas. I'm like, this isn't going to work. This is horrible. Having this experience, about to just go spend a ton of money on essentially just one job, and and just decrease the profitability on that job to almost nothing. And I just reached out in our Slack channel and said, listen, I have this problem, what can I do? And we were lucky enough to save, we saved that. So we call that disaster control. But
very nice. I love it. So just a few more questions for you, man. I won't keep you forever, but what are your goals? I know you're in college, you're trying to get a degree. Is this going to be a full-time thing? This going to be a side hustle for a long time? You want to scale? You want to stay small?
I think I definitely want to scale more. I mentioned in our group meeting yesterday that we're working on moving into commercial space in the next couple months, which is pretty awesome. I don't think, doing the smalls and what I was doing previously was ever going to land me in the position to move into a commercial space, given like what the rent goes for these days in those spaces. So I think that's awesome. We also have a good relationship with the who will be the landlord, so that's a pretty awesome experience. But I definitely do want to scale more. As far as like what I'm gonna do after I graduate college is still kind of up in the air. I'm thinking if I could scale it enough, I want to run the business full time, at least for a couple years and just see how far I could go with it. But obviously, if I get to a point where, hey, I want to leave it at this point and just maintain, it would definitely be a good and considerably large side gig to have. And it also builds experience. So I was talking to one of my professors today, and he was like, you could grow it to a certain extent, and you could grow it as big as you want, but having that experience will put you so far ahead in engineering, for instance, because you're able to take that knowledge and apply it to even larger projects in completely different, like in the construction industry, which is, dealing with millions of dollars.
It's good. I love it. So, last question I have for you today. Say somebody's watching this video or listening to this podcast right now, and they're thinking about checking out the program. They're thinking about joining it. They're scared. They're nervous. They don't know if it's going to work. They don't know if we're all in cahoots together to scam everybody online. What would you tell them? What would they need to be like prepared to do if they're going to join the program? Like, what do they need to be prepared to put in from a work standpoint? And then what else? What other advice would you give somebody considering checking out the program?
I think the most critical path I could recommend to someone that wants to join this program and scale their business is what I would call like the 3-month approach. Give it 3 months and see exactly how it affects your business. Obviously, this is, it depends on where their business is now and where they want to go with it. But they need to be willing to put in 100% of the effort, because you could join a program. It kind of compares very closely with like joining the gym and going and having a gym membership. You could have a gym membership and pay $50 a month to go to the gym and have no results because you're not putting in the effort. So I think what you have to do is, if you're going to join, you have to be prepared to put in 3 months of, I wouldn't say nonstop work. You need to have a life. You have to have a work-life balance, but you need to be able to put in as much effort as possible, because if you don't put that effort in, it's kind of like what you put in is what you're going to get out. So you have to be able to put in as much as you can to try to scale it. And I will agree that like the beginning is probably the hardest that it'll ever be, because then you'll start to develop like routines with following up with leads and building a production schedule and getting all the logistics done. And then as far as production goes, like you'll be able to simplify your production schedule so that it works better.
Don't say that, Nick. When you scale, things get it's just your problems just change. It doesn't get easier. It just gets
True.
different.
It gets different, but you're a little bit more used to it. So, you have a little
That
more
is true.
skill, hopefully.
Yeah, there you
That
go.
is true.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. What Nick is saying is very true, because you're coming in and you are completely just getting blindsided with a ton of new information. You have no rhythms, no routines at all, and you're learning it all on the fly. But Keith is also completely correct, where your problems change as you scale. You
Right.
still have issues, but the hardest part, I would say, the hardest part is the very beginning, because, and that's what stinks. I wish I could make that the easiest part, because we'd have people joining all the time,
Right.
But if you can come in and just learn and just have an attitude to learn, that's really it. Have an attitude that you're going to just check out the Slack channel every day. You're going to ask questions. You're going to learn. You're going to lean in. You're going to connect with other guys that are doing great. And you're like, hey, how are you doing so good? Like just coming in and not being bashful, not being shy, not being quiet and reserved and staying over in the corner, but just really engaging with the community and the program. You're going to see some great results happen. So, Keith, Luke, do you guys have any other questions for Nick?
I do. I want to share a story. So when I first became a coach, I think Nick had been in the program like 2-3 weeks maybe. And we were talking, and I was like, tell me about your setup. And he's like, well, I'm rocked out of my basement. And you said you had like 800 or 1,000 square feet, right, Nick?
Yeah, it's about 800 square feet.
Okay. And I was like, okay, all right, you got enough. And you were like, yeah, but this is going to last me like a year. And I was like, oh, all right. And then, we started talking some more, and I'm thinking like, this guy has no idea what we're about to do to the business. And so, we always talk about like shattering those glass ceilings, a lot of times these guys don't even know what's possible. And we can show you what's possible. And dude, you're a great example of that, because did you think 6 months ago you were going to be in a commercial space now?
No, I did not. And I was like, well, if I sell one or two tables a month and get my production nailed down, then maybe like could build up enough, money to actually move all the stuff into a commercial space and then slowly upgrade and so on and so forth. But I did not think that it was going to happen within 3 or 4 months of it. I figured I was going to be in my basement for a year. I'd graduate college, then I'd end up with like an actual job, and then it was just going to plateau. But that was far from what actually happened.
Nick, what you do well is lead with your weakness. You are first when you're going through something, you hit up the coaches, you hit up the group, and you take action. So that's what I respect and appreciate about you.
Thank you.
I'll just tag on that as well. That is absolutely key. The guys, every single guy that does that in the program, that doesn't try to come in with some type of ego or something to prove, but like, hey, I really just want to get better. I want to learn. And hey, here's all the things I suck at. Can you guys help me? That approach every single time has paid dividends over and over and over and over for every single guy that has taken that approach inside the program. And so, all right. Anything else? Any other goodies? Nick, dude, you're awesome. Thanks for joining us today. Man, I'm so glad that you're here. I love to see young guys like you crushing it in the program. So for all the 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 50-year-old men out there listening to this, these are 20-year-old whippersnappers. Okay? They are in here killing the game, and you're letting them run circles around you while you're sitting on the couch. So get in the game, do your thing, come hang out with us in the program right now. And also, I've been saying this like in every video that I'm doing, but it's like right now it is good right now. Q4 is always good. Keith spent $4,000 in ads last month, did 60,000 in sales. Luke came right under a 10x return, which that's
the lowest it's been in a long time.
Yeah. We said earlier on this episode, Nick has gotten a 20x return for 60 days in a row now. So it's good right now. Now it's a good time to hop in. If you're ready to scale, ready to jump, ready to take the leap, we're committed to seeing guys succeed. And so we're not going to leave anybody stranded. We're not going to leave anybody out on an island. That's one thing I will say too, is that I will brag on the support that we offer to clients inside the program. Keith and Luke do an incredible job, and I could not do it without them. But all right. Oh, Nick, where can we find you?
You can find me at planettawoodworking.com or Planetta Woodworking on Facebook.
Very nice. Very nice. Y'all go check him out. Send him questions. Talk to him about his commercial space. He's pretty pumped up about it. He's getting ready. He's excited to move into it. And ask him to smile for you. Nick has one of the best smiles in the world. So it's
funny when he gets a call and he tells us his wins, and you could just hear his smile.
we literally get on the call each week, and if Nick has had a crazy week, like he just gets on the call and starts smiling.
Yeah.
He hasn't said a word yet, but I'm like, oh, Nick is pumped.
Just be on mute and you just see him there. Jesus.
I love it. Well, guys, thank you guys for your time. Nick, love you, dude. Thanks for being a part of the program, and thanks for setting the tone for all these other guys as well. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up this episode. We'll see you on the next one.